Welcome to Charter Oak Chess Club's YouTube channel, and in today's video we're going over a game played by the second world champion, Emanuel Lasker. Alright, here we go. So this was played in 1896 at the famous Nuremberg tournament. It was like the first super tournament of the day. We had people like Steinitz, Lasker. Obviously, Lasker ended up winning the tournament very convincingly. Maroczy, named Maroczy Bine. Pretty much every old opening is here. We have Winnower French, Adolf Albin of the Albin counter gambit. So a lot of big names. Harry Pillsbury, very famous American player from back in the day. And just many, many more. But Lasker was the man to beat. And let's see how he does in this game. So we have pawn to e4, pawn to e5, and we get Roy Lopez. And Lasker plays knight to f6. And this is the Berlin defense. And many times if we see a Berlin today, we think boring draw, maybe a prearranged draw by super grandmasters. But back when Lasker played this is kind of a new and hip idea. Not the normal a6, not Steinitz's d6 or the Cosio defense. Nothing too defensive, kind of just attacking right away. And let's see how it goes. So he takes, we have pawn to d4, and now from this position we had bishop to e7, but just to show you one of the many Berlin draws we can get, something like knight to d6, and then pawn takes, hitting the knight, and the knight's going to hit the bishop, and now it looks like black's just completely winning. They're up a full piece. But after a4, that knight is trapped, it's got nowhere to go, and so we just exchange en passant, and then queen takes, and from here, people will just shuffle back and forth, check, go back, offer a trade, and now it's a draw. So a lot of times GMs will use this at the high level as just a drawing technique, but we're going to see some very different play today. So queen comes out to e2, it hits the knight goes away, capture with the b pawn, capturing towards the center, pawn takes, and now our knight that started on g8 is now mysteriously on b7. And one thing that's really cool about this game is Lasker is one of the very early chess players, and he would write books, giving tips to beginners about chess, and it's, control the center, get your knights and bishops out. And this is much more of a hyper-modern approach. I mean, we got this knight on b7, I can't move my light squared bishop, my rook is useless. My only piece that's really developed is the bishop on e7, and I have to castle, right? White structure looks a bit more normal, right? They could bring the knight in, the bishop in, bring the rooks into the center. So it seems like a very strange position for black, but they still had these hyper-modern ideas ready all the way back in 1896. So pawn to b3. Now, the common theme of this book is if you're fianchettoing a bishop when you don't need to, it's probably a bad move. With that said, this is totally fine. We just lost a little bit of the advantage for white. This is known as a Pillsbury variation. Harry Pillsbury is a great American player that was playing in this tournament, and he was actually one of only 4 people to score a win over Lasker in the tournament. The idea, obviously, is that we're going to fianchetto, and we're going to use that bishop to attack the king. Black obviously has a castle king side. But with that said, just playing something like knight to f3 would have made a bit more sense. Get your bishop out, move your rook in. But b3 is played. Now castle, bishop comes out, and pawn to d5, and we have an exchange. Now, why did we take with en passant and let black fix their pawn structure? Well, if we don't, maybe we get something like bishop to e6. And with bishop to e6, I can't move my pawn. If I can't move my pawn, this bishop I worked so hard to attack with is really, really bad. So capturing with the pawn to fix the pawn structure. Knight goes to d2. Don't know where it's going after that. Rook goes to e8, rook goes to e1. The idea is we can't move the bishop because it's pinned. There's back rank problems here, like if we played bishop to f6 right now, we could sacrifice the queen and just win the game. And Lasker finds a very easy way to defend against that. Bishop to d7. Now the bishop's guarding the rook, and this queen does have to watch out for the rook on e8. And in this position, it's completely drawn. White has a number of moves they can play. None of them are very fun. Book was recommending maybe queen f1, but it also says if you're playing queen f1, why bother playing chess? The idea is to get the queen off that open file. But there's other moves that you could play. You could try to, move the knight out, maybe to c4, maybe queen e3, get the knight to f1, maybe pawn to c4 right away. There's other things we could play, but this move is not a move we can play at all. Knight to e4. Knight to e4 does absolutely nothing. If their plan was to get to g3, they obviously didn't think about Lasker's response. That knight is going to be pinned to the queen, and from this position, what started out as a very dry game becomes an amazing masterclass in tempo. There are 20 forcing moves in a row by Lasker. So we're talking checks, captures, and attacks until the end of the game. Now, some of them are very easy. It starts off very easy right now. Pawn to d5, of course. Let's hit that knight. The knight goes back. Never good that the knight's going back to where it just started. From here, another pretty easy move to find. Bishop to a3. Bishop to a3, the idea is we're hitting the bishop. We're also hitting the queen with the discovered attack. We knew that was going to happen. In the game, bishop e5 was a nice find, saving the bishop and also saving the queen. Although I think it's interesting that we look at this. Queen takes on e8. We capture, they capture. White has 8 points, black has 9 points. And this is bad simply because of how uncoordinated white's pieces are. Let's start with this bishop on a3, we can attack that immediately with our queen, and then when it goes back, this bishop is hitting our castle, so we're going to make sure that bishop bites on granite, while simultaneously making sure our light squared bishop can become a bit more powerful. So by finding some key moves, right, we can obviously get this knight developed in a few ways, bring the rook onto the open file. Black is going to be better in this game. But with that said, bishop to e5 was a good find. Pawn to f6, we are pinning the bishop to the queen, so it looks like black is just going to simply recapture that bishop, and there's nothing much that white can do about it, except the game went on because this bishop on a3 and his knight on b7 are both hanging, so we have a fork, capture, take the bishop, because bishop pair is very strong in an open game, and this game is definitely opening up. And I love this position for Lasker. He could have chose to save maybe the knight on b7 or move his bishop back instead of taking on e5, but if we look at his pawn structure and we remember how this game started, suddenly Lasker has complete control of the center, which he most certainly did not have at the beginning of the game. Pawn to e4, knight goes into the center. I had people guess the forcing move. A lot of them would play pawn to c5, just continuing to attack in the center of the board. But Lasker finds queen to f6, hitting the knight, and the reason that this is better is because it also hits the f2 pawn and develops our queen. Pawn defends the knight, forcing move. Now f2 is weak. White has to go and defend. They defend with if they defend with the rook, this seems like the most natural way to go about it. Your rook wasn't really doing anything on the e-file anymore. You're defending this way. Unfortunately, I can play this move. I can hit the knight. If they defend, this is a problem. We have checkmate. If they move the pawn, we take the rook. So they can't play that. They didn't play that. They decided, I'm going to play pawn to f3, which at first glance looks a little weaker because you're kind of breaking your castle. All right, queen to g5, hitting the knight. Defense, knight to c5. This knight started on g8, and look at the route that it's going to take and where it's going to end up in this game. Knight to c5, threatening to fork. Knight goes back. They're offering to trade queens. Obviously, they know that they're on the defensive. Lasker goes, I'm not going to trade queens. Queen to g6 is still a forcing move because the threat of d3 is back on the board. Rook goes there. We're going to hit the queen anyways, get the outpost. From this position, we have to continue the attack. The worst thing is when our attack dies. So what are we going to do now? Well, a move like bishop to h3 looks fun, but there's no rook to pick up anymore. How about knight to f4? Knight to f4, threatening checkmate, bringing the knight into a more active square. We got the knight, the bishop, the queen, even our rook on f8 has a job. The knight goes to g3. How do we remove the knight? We play pawn to h5, and now a really great move for white. They played knight d to e2, and the idea here is try to get rid of this knight, and if we take this way, we can move our knight back, we can bring the queen in and defend that square, and it might look like white has found a way to simplify and save their position, but nope. Lasker finds an amazing move here. Pause the video, see if you can find it in the follow-up as well. Knight sack on g2, king takes, and it looks like we were just going to play h4, right, and pick up the knight right away, but this would help fix their pawn structure. So instead, Lasker goes, nope, another forcing move, check with a fork. You have to capture back. And now from here, a beautiful continuation, bishop to h3. Now in the game, the king takes the bishop on h3, but let's see what happens if they try to save their king by going king f2. Well, rook can take with check, king takes, and now the bishop's cutting off over here. I got my queen over here. Let's bring the rook in and play rook to f8 check. King goes over here. Let me hit the knight because white's only up by 2 points, so they need to save their material. And now, it's almost like we go for ladder mate using our queen and our bishop. This makes sure that the king cannot escape, towards this corner of the board, tries to find a new castle. We're bringing the king into the center of the board. If your king's on d4, the game should be over. We have pawn check. It doesn't matter which one of the pawns they take. Capture, it looks like, oh, we're picking up a queen. We don't even need the queen. King goes to the side. Let's get another check, and let's just finish up this game, checkmating the king in the center of the board. So because of that, Lasker's opponent probably didn't calculate all that, but they probably just are strong enough to know, hey, if the king's going towards the center of the board, that's not a good look. I'm probably going to lose the game in a few moves. So instead, let me pick up the bishop. Now, queen check, I think this is another, maybe not a hard move to find, but, don't play rook takes right away. Sometimes we get really eager just to recapture our material right away. We'd have a pin here. It looks pretty good. Nope, bring in the queen, continue to get checks. King goes in the corner now. If the king went up, we could have moves like, we could just check, force him this way, and then play h4 and pick up the knight. King goes here. How do we continue? We're going to kick the knight, of course. Knight goes over here, and now the final touch, the game that made white resign in this position. Lasker plays queen to e3. And the idea is there's only one square that king can safely move to, g2. If you play g2, your checkmate comes in the form of a pawn, which is just a beautiful way to end the game. And then if we try to play anything else, like, okay, let's play knight to f2, right? Well, we could just capture here. I'm still going to force a much more traditional checkmate. If your queen goes, let's say like queen g1, I just play check, your queen has to go up, that's a checkmate. So maybe something like queen to f1, that way I'm covering the square. Well, we pick up a rook, that's pretty good, but the pawn's blocking here. We're checking the king on the back rank. The knight would have to go here, and now it doesn't matter what white plays. I'm just going to bring in this other rook to help me get checkmate. And we get checkmate on the back rank.